This is Sunday Skate with Scott McLaughlin, Andrew Razor Raycroft, and Bridget Prue on WEEI.
You always want to play hard at home. The fans deserve it. Pay a lot of money to come here and watch us play, and obviously they have every right to boo when the effort, is like that. And we're talking about it too. Always work hard, and even though we're down, we're trying to push back. But tonight it was unacceptable. We deserve to obviously get booed. The second period is the worst I've seen us play this year.
That is Elias Lindholm that you heard talking about the Bruins' second period last night of their 6-2 loss to the Tampa Bay Lightning, a period in which the Bruins got outshot 21-0, out-attempted 43-3, outscored 3-0.
Well, that's what happens when you're spending the entire period on the other end of the ice.
Could not get out of their own zone.
No.
At all. Just could not make a play on the breakout. Clean pass, none of it. The few times they did get out, it was like desperation just to get over center ice. So there was no offensive zone possession. It was an absolute mess. And I want to get it. We got Razor on the phone, so
wait. First, can I just say, happy birthday?
Oh, thank you.
Can't just gloss over that from the beginning.
It was
happy
yesterday.
40th.
It was yesterday. We're moving forward, Brady. All right, let. Oh yeah, great.
Can you play Happy Birthday in the next segment? Thank you. All right, let's take Razor because we got some.
Jacob's sucking up because he doesn't want me to mention BC's loss last night.
Well,
so.
I knew you were going to do that in the first 2 minutes. So
happy birthday, Scott. Your team won and mine lost.
Thanks, Jacob. All right, let's bring in Razor. Good morning, Razor. How are you doing?
Wonderful morning, gang. How we doing?
Better than the Bruins did last night. So I want to get your take on that second period. I just went through the numbers. But when something like that happens, is it effort? Is it just the talent difference where Tampa Bay decides, hey, we're the better team, we're going to take it to them? Or combination of both? How does a period go that badly for a team?
No, it's mostly a talent difference, and the same thing happened in Ottawa in the first period when these better teams, these teams that are playoff ready, getting playoff ready, are really playing for something, decide to put their foot on your throat, and you don't have you don't have the defense to move the puck out of the zone. You don't have the quality of wingers to get the puck and move it and make three plays to break pressure that the Tampa Bay Lightning brought last night. You end up in your zone all night, and especially in the second period where you have a long change, and I just heard the end where you're barely getting to center ice to dump it in, let alone create any forecheck on your own. It spirals downhill pretty quickly, and that's what we're going to see. I mean, this is where you're at when you trade away 4 NHL players and off of your roster and get 2 back. That's what you end up with in this league, and on top of it, having your 2 best D-men out. So it's going to be tough, and this is where they're at.
Yeah. So obviously these last 2 games, the loss to Ottawa, last night's loss to Tampa, I think it looked like what we all thought this was going to look like after the deadline, where they sell off. Marchand's gone, Coyle, Carlo, even Frederick and Brazeau, although the Brazeau trade's looking pretty nice right off the bat for the Bruins. But this is kind of what we were expecting. We were expecting this to look like a bad team. But they did surprise us right after the deadline with those big wins over Tampa and Florida. So how do you kind of square that? Did they just get, this emotional bump where, it didn't even have time to settle in yet? Did Tampa and Florida maybe take them lightly those first 2 games? Because those games those weren't hang on for dear life games. Those were games that they played well and had control of those games at times.
Yeah, they got a bit of a bump in Tampa. Listen, they scored a goal from center ice on
that helps.
Andre Vasilevsky in Tampa. The Florida one, they were down 1-0 the entire game. They played pretty good, but Florida had gotten lulled into their 2-0 lead, and then the Bruins, found a way to score 3 goals real quickly at the end of that game and kind of sneak up on them. And then you get to Ottawa where they need to win. They need to make a push. And then Tampa last night has lost 3 in a row, had revenge on their mind, knew they played bad against the Bruins last week, and had their full attention. So, listen, this is what's going to happen. So they got the bump after the deadline. They got their 2 games. These 2 games set in, okay, we're not making the playoffs. Like that's kind of what just happened over the last 4 or 5 days. You're probably going to have a tough go of it over this road trip. You're playing at least 2 teams that are playoff bound, that are fighting for position. And then you're going to get out of that, and it's going to completely set in that you're missing the playoffs, and you might end up going on a 3 or 4 game winning streak because you're playing free and you're playing a couple teams that are doing their best to get into the playoffs. It typically happens in that fashion for teams that don't make the playoffs and are kind of out of it, not necessarily mathematically, but for all other accounts. That's what's happened on the couple of times that I missed the playoffs. You go through the 12 stages of mourning, and that's part of it. And where the Bruins are right now is a lot of it. Again, it comes down to the talent, but the mindset will change for them over the next couple of weeks in a few different ways.
So I wanna get your reaction to something that I first of all, I guess we'll start with this. How have you thought Swayman has played the last 2 games? And just, I don't think that you can blame him for what happened last night, but I just want to get your perspective on what you've seen from him, especially as we get to these situations where he's starting a 3rd or 4th game in a row.
Well, he was bad in Ottawa, right? Like he mishandled the puck. He didn't have good reads. He didn't have good technique. Very basic plays. He wasn't good. He wasn't ready against Ottawa the other night. Last night, I thought, after giving up the first goal, 2:20 in, so now you've given up 5 goals on 17 shots and 22 minutes of NHL play. You're like, oh boy, this could, as a goalie, you're thinking this could really get out of control again and on home ice. But I thought he recalibrated really well. I thought he played well last night. Of course, under siege in the second period, but he stuck with it, and that's going to be his challenge now. He's going to still play a lot of hockey. He's still got 8-9 games at least, if not 10, down the stretch here, and he's going to have 2, 3, 4 of those kind of periods. He's going to have a few of these nights where the other team's just more dialed in, more ready to play, and that's going to be on the goalie to handle all that. So he's got to get through this. It's going to be different. He's never done this again. Another situation in his career that he's never had to really face, and it'll be difficult. It's going to be hard. It's because you're taking the brunt of it, and your numbers are taking the brunt of it, and you're going to get the criticism for it, and he's going to have to fight through it.
Yeah, I want to play you one of the things you said after the game, Razor, and I want to get your reaction to it. So, Jacob, do you mind playing this cut?
The pressure is what you put in tires, Dupes. It's more the factor that I know that we have something in here to be successful, and we don't get results. That's frustrating. And we just got to keep ourselves to a standard that hasn't been met every game, and that's something that we need to work on. And that's experience in the bank, though. And guys that are going through this right now are going to get experience, and that's going to help us in the future. And right now, it's all we control is day at a time. And, all we got to do is just capitalize on our positives and move forward. And we have another game on Monday, and that's what we need to look forward to.
So, Razor, do you feel like he's reacting after losses maybe in the right way? Do you think his mind's in the right place? And also my favorite part of that is when he says pressure is what you put in tires, as he just sneaks that one in.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they're not in any kind of a pressure situation right now. I mean, that's the pressure is playing in the playoffs. Pressure is trying to win divisions. Pressure isn't, limping into the, through the deadline and playing these kind of games. But listen, I don't take a lot of stock into what guys say in the dressing room after games. I really don't. We've all been there. They're pretty well coached. They're told to say this and that. Jeremey this is his way of speaking to everybody after games. This is his way of kind of putting up the wall and staying positive and using, kind of big fancy words at different times. But at the end of the day, it's not easy, and there is a grind. And yeah, some guys are getting experience that they wouldn't get because they're playing a lot higher up in a lineup that they typically wouldn't in the National Hockey League. I don't know if that really helps them going forward. There are a few players that need to have great finishes here, despite the results of the team, that have to show the ownership or the management that what kind of a player they are and how to complement them over the summer to make them better and make the lineup better. But at the end of the day, I think, whatever guys are saying at this point in the season after the games in these tough losses or beatdown losses, I don't really hold a lot of weight in it.
Yeah, he kind of has this, at least in these post-game scrums, this eternally optimistic kind of attitude, and where he's always looking for the positives, things to build on, and I do think that rubs some fans the wrong way at times. Where I think we've been through this before with other guys, right? Like Allmark dealt with the same thing, where it's like fans want to sometimes hear players reflect like their anger, like sound upset, and we played Elias Lindholm after the game, and like he did. Now fans have other issues with him, but Swayman's just, at least in this setting, he's just not like that. Like maybe that's what he needs to be successful. Is he is always looking for the positives and always thinking the next game, the next day, the next period is going to be.
It's all about having the mind of a goldfish.
Yeah, as Linus.
Yeah, so so Linus did a little bit different, right? Less intense and more, just look past it. Obviously, everyone had a problem with Tukes and the way he talked, and he was very matter of fact about it. I sucked, we sucked, but people thought that was annoying. Again, you're never really in a good position when you're a losing goaltender. You just aren't. Like, there's nothing you can really say that's gonna check every box for all of the fan base. And at this point now, I can't imagine a scenario over the next 15 games, 14 games where Jeremey changes that, right? Like, as well, guys, that you're in the room and the guys get stubborn on certain ways of doing things as well. So he's not going to change. It makes it in a lot of guys' minds, it's worse when you start changing your narrative and you change the way you've done it all year long in this kind of a situation. So, listen, at the end of the day, when you lose, everyone's, somebody's always annoyed. That's just how this works. And again, don't take a whole lot of stock into what they're saying. It's more about, kind of how the attitude is on the ice on a daily basis.
Razor, I did want to ask you about, we've been hearing a lot. I know I've written about it. His numbers when he makes his third or fourth straight start, and updating again after last night. First or second start in a row, he's 17, 14, and 3 with a .910 save percentage. Third, fourth, or fifth start in a row, he's now 3, 9, and 3 with an .872 save percentage. I heard you on Morning Brew talking about how, this is something that he just needs to figure out. It's not, he said it's not on the Bruins to really manage this. Swayman should be able to handle it. And I would agree with that, but why do you think that has been a struggle? Like, why are the numbers so much worse?
Well, the one thing, so I went through just the third start. I didn't go through to the fourth. The fourth, he's actually played, he's had some good performances or results, I should say, in those fourth games. The third games, he has the 7-goal game and the 8-goal game are built into that, the Dallas and the Winnipeg one. So when you have a small sample size of 11, 12 games and you've given up 7 and 8 in 2 of those, your numbers are going to get smoked. They're going to get absolutely smoked. So, there's some nuance to it. At the end of the day, this was a thing. To start the season, this was one of my talking points with Jeremey and why this season was going to be more difficult for him. He's never done this in pro hockey. He's never played these games. He played 35 games straight in college, but it's a different schedule. You're playing Friday, Saturday. You're not flying. You're not traveling. You're at home. You practice all week. You cannot compare it. And most guys, almost all guys, including Andre Vasilevsky, including Connor Hellebuck, played in the minors and did this and found a way to learn how to play 3-3, learn how to play on Sunday afternoon when you feel awful and you've already played 120 minutes on the weekend and your groin hurts and your leg hurts, but you have to find a way to win to continue to prove yourself. So he's learning this and he's trying to figure this out at the highest level, and it's difficult because as you're getting scrutinized differently, the players are better. The margin of error is so much smaller than what it is in the minors. So he's learning. He's inputting all of these things and how to do it, and I'm sure he's going to benefit from it down the line. But right now, it's not easy, and I knew it wasn't going to be. I know the difference between being a starter and being on a rotation. Listen, the game in Ottawa, he wouldn't have played last one. He's had Linus Ullmark there for the last 3 years. He had Tuukka Rask a little bit at the start as well. On top of it, that there's no chance he would have played this last game. He would have had 3 goalie practices, and then he would have played against Buffalo on Monday. Well, that's an easier task than having Tampa Bay coming in last night. So there's just a lot of different issues through the schedule, and this is the big part of it. So, again, I'm not leaning on the numbers and going through it and exactly why he's 4-11 or whatever it is, but it is a lot harder, and it is going to be on him to figure it out. You can't, as a coach, you can't not play him in the third game because that he's getting paid $8 million. I mean, that's you. You're the starting goalie.
And so I guess the real question off of that, Razor, is, and I don't think it's a physical thing. It's more of a mental thing, like you're saying. And will play this answer. You asked him, Scott, about this last night. But the question that everybody wants to know is, how long is it going to take till he is used to it? Because obviously this season we're kind of coming to a close here. We know what the fate looks like it's going to be. They're going to miss the playoffs. But next year, is this going to be the same concern? Is this something that he's going to figure out by then in order to get back on track for them to have a chance next year?
He hopes so. I mean, everybody hopes so. I suppose. I think he will. If I think. I don't. No one. You don't truly know. There's a lot of guys that never did figure it out, and that's why they're not starters in the National Hockey League, right? Like this is what it is. It's a really, really hard league, and there's only 20 NHL, like legit 20 NHL starters in the entire world. So it's not an easy job. It's one that is difficult to do and difficult to figure out. I think he does it. I think the Bruins think he does it because they wouldn't have signed him to this deal if they didn't think that he had the capability to figure things out and work in an experiment and get through these kind of hard adversity situations. But there's no book on it. It's not. There's no. Well, once you get to 25 games, then you figure it out. Some guys do. Some guys don't. I do, but at the end of the day, I expect him to be better next year. The other thing too, okay, and the other side of this is you're beholden to the circumstance in front of you too, and good teams find ways to gut out their third game in 5 nights, the third game in 4 days. They find ways to gut out through tough parts of the schedule, and this team wasn't able to do that either. So it's not always on the goalie. I think that, if you went through the Washington Capitals 3-3, their goaltender opportunities, the high danger chances against, et cetera, would be better than what the Bruins look like as well.
All right. Razor, we do have to get to our break here, but most important question, just set the scene for us. Is this state championship, semifinals? What?
That's exactly where I'm at. Yep, I'm in the beautiful New England Sports Center parking lot that somehow is always busy. Like getting here at 8:30 this morning, it was still packed. I don't understand why and how that happens, but I've got a spot all the way in the back. It's the semifinals for 12U. So the girls, my daughter was up, waking me up very early today. She's excited, so hopefully it goes well.
Yeah, good luck to her. Is this the team that she plays on with Katie Crawley's daughter?
Yes, exactly. So it's the whole crew. So they're a good little team, but they've they've outpunched themselves here in these state tournaments. They've won the last two, so I think they're feeling the heat of being the team that's won and the expectation so high. So we'll see how they make out today. They're still 11-year-old little girls, so you never know what you're going to get.
Well, Razor, just tell them pressure's what you put in tires, dupes.
Yeah.
There you go. That's that solves everything. Those little quirky little statements, especially with these girls today. Yeah, pressure is what you put in tires, huh? Whatever it takes to get you through the season. We're going to be doing a lot of this on Sundays, I think, over the next 5 or 6 weeks. So I'm going to start putting all these things in the bank to get through our 2 hours.
So that
it's not going to be fun.
You can put together your own miracle speech and motivate them.
Yeah, exactly. At least we'll have Hockey East finals to talk about next week.
Yes.
The Terriers against UConn. Oof.
That's right.
Oh, man. Yeah, he was taking a victory lap this morning. I'm sure you heard him already.
Yeah, Jacob's BC down, Bridget's UMass down. Terrier's still going.
Stop.
He's like, I'm turning your mic off. Well, thank you, Razor. And we hope you enjoy the game and let us know what happens, and we'll see you next week.
Radio, have a good day, guys. Enjoy talking about that one last night.
Yeah, will do. All right. That's Razor. We got to catch our break. More Sunday. Jacob has your trending, and then more Sunday skate coming up.
The pressure's what you put in tires.
You're listening to Sunday Skate on WEEI.
Now we're going to go to your phone calls. You can call in or text us, 617-779-7937.
Make sure to include happy birthday to Scott in your...
No, you don't have to do that. In fact, I'm hanging up on you if you do. All right, let's start with Maria in Watertown. Good morning, Maria.
Scott, you would never hang up on me, would you? Because I wish you a happy birthday.
That's true. We'll let you slide.
All right, thanks. I appreciate that, and good luck to Razor's daughter's team today as well.
Yes.
So my question centers around coaching, and I'm not particularly inspired with a lot of confidence in this coaching staff, but I don't understand on Thursday night when Joe Sacco sees his goalie unable to make a save, his team who is under siege, why he waits until the end of that period to pull a goalie or not even call a timeout to reel his guys in, to talk to them and at least maybe stave off the momentum from Ottawa. It's just it's a frustrating bone of contention with me, with not only this coaching staff but a lot of coaching staffs across the league. I just don't get it. You didn't even give your team a chance to get back in that game.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. Yeah, I feel like this is pretty common around the league, and I'm with you where, like, I don't get it. I would not hesitate at all to use a timeout early if my team is, swimming upstream. I think coaches hesitate because, A, they want to have it towards the end of the game if it's close, and B, they want to be able to challenge if there's a situation where they can potentially challenge a critical goal. And if you use your timeout, you lose your ability to challenge as well. So, to that extent, like I get it, but I'm with you. Like sometimes you just need to do something to stop momentum. And yeah, that first period Thursday would have been one of them. The second period last night, certainly.
And you see college coaches do this pretty often. Like I feel like college coaches are maybe even more inclined to use their timeouts in earlier situations. Maybe that's because they know they're dealing with younger guys and they need to take that break to have a conversation. And maybe NHL coaches think, oh, these guys kind of know what to do in this situation. But I agree. I think that in college you see it more often, and a lot of times it feels like it does give people a breather, and it might be the right move to do for some of these games, like Maria's saying, too.
Yeah, and it's about knowing the temperature of your bench, too, right? Like, the coach is standing right there. Presumably, you would hope, be able to gauge, like, hey, does our bench seem deflated? Like, are guys not in it? Are we kind of letting this get away from us? Or does it feel like the bench is still in a good place and guys are talking and they're staying upbeat? And you can almost get tricked by that at times. Like maybe Sacco, these last two games, maybe he thought guys on the bench still had the right attitude. But they still weren't able to stop it. They couldn't stop the snowball from rolling downhill. So, yeah, I lean towards, look, most games, coaches don't end up using their timeouts. Most games, it just goes by the wayside, and you don't get to keep it for later. So I would not hesitate to use it early. I would tend to be in that camp, but I do think most coaches seem to like to save them if they can.
Yeah. You want to go to Jay? We have another call.
Sure.
Here.
Yeah, let's go to Jay in North Carolina. What's up, Jay?
Hey, guys, we're waiting for all hell to break loose down here. The maelstrom's coming, thunderstorms, possible tornadoes, but we'll see.
Oh, in North Carolina, that's right.
Yeah. Good luck, Jay.
Yeah, well, listen, I'll tell you, the Bruins' demise began when they got rid of Linus Ullmark. They had two starting goalies, and that's the last line of defense of the goalies, and they had two stalwart goalies. That was their first mistake. But as I say, they don't possess the consistency. I watched the Ottawa game. That was their make-or-break game, and they broke. And they can beat the upper echelon teams, but they can't beat the teams that are fighting for a playoff spot. And I just said that was their death knell. It pains me to say that, but next year, Bruins, next year. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, it did kind of feel that way. Now, I guess what I will say is, at this point, it's not Ottawa that they're chasing. Ottawa has gained some separation in this playoff race. They're in the first wildcard spot, and they're now 5 points clear of anyone in that battle for the second wildcard spot. So the Senators are looking pretty safe, but yeah, I mean, just to reset the standings here, like Rangers and Canadiens both won last night, so you got Rangers at 72 points, Canadiens at 71. Columbus has slipped a little. They're down to 70. And then you got the Bruins and Red Wings at 68. And the Bruins have still played more games than all those teams that they're chasing. And it's 4 teams they have to jump, basically. Like, it starts to slip away pretty quickly. And that's, look, if they had bounced back last night, I don't think we'd be looking at the Ottawa game as, like, the make or break game. But now you compound it with a second straight loss and a second straight bad loss where you were just completely outclassed, really. Now it does start to feel like a breaking point. Like it feels like we're just about there. And Razor even kind of referenced it. Like it's setting in that there's probably not going to be this magical playoff push that, I think we all, to maybe some extent, started to think like, hey, wait a minute. After the wins over Tampa and Florida,
I don't know if we all really believed it, but like I said,
no. But you start to think there was a chance. Like you allowed yourself to consider the possibility
to be happy for a second. But yeah, the Tampa Bay the win, the 4-0 win at Tampa Bay. The whole time I was watching that, I was like, I can't believe what I'm watching right now. But it kind of felt like a fluke because Tampa doesn't usually go down that easy. And then when I felt like it wasn't a fluke was that Florida game. I thought that they actually put together a really strong game, came from behind, won. But you had to know it was coming, right? Like they're playing desperate teams. And like Ottawa. And they're playing teams that we're adding this season rather than selling. And you look at some of the teams ahead of them, and the Rangers made some crazy moves this year, but at the end of the day, they got JT Miller, and they got better. So, that's a team that now finds themselves in the last wild card spot in the playoffs, and they're making a push. And then you see the Canadiens in front of you, and that kind of gives you a sense of how your season has gone, because the Canadiens were not a team that's made the playoffs recently. They're a team that has been trying to push back in there, and they've passed you. So you've gone from a team that makes the playoffs every year and kind of laughs at the Canadiens over the past few years to getting passed by them in the standings. And, you're going to have to try to catch back up to them as well as all those other teams you just listed.
Yeah, and the Canadiens went down for a long time. And I would say, they're still not quite back up, right? Like they might miss the playoffs here again, but they're certainly on their way up. Like they're a team that feels like they're trending in the right direction. Finally has all these young pieces that they've been waiting on starting to come together. You're going the opposite way right now. And it becomes a question of how quickly can you turn it around and get back on the upswing? They tell us, Don Sweeney told us after the deadline, he hopes it's next year. Like, they seem to want to be back. That doesn't mean that they expect to be a Stanley Cup contender next year, but they expect to be back on the upswing and in the playoffs, or, at least competing to be in the playoffs. I remain skeptical of whether that's going to happen in 1 year, but they have to pitch that, because again, even the fans who say this is going to take a while, but this is what they have to do, and they wanted to, they want to get picks and prospects and get younger. And it's easy for people to say that right now. You go to a game like last night, and Bridget, I know you were at the BU UMass game. You had that call, but the atmosphere in that building last night was miserable.
Which, as opposed to the Florida game, was higher than I expected. That vibe was really good. It was like they were giving this team another chance, and maybe that's just because there was, a few fights and there was some scoring, especially that third period. The crowd was really in it when the Bruins were making that comeback. But to hear what and a few of our other colleagues had texted me that vibe was just terrible last night. So it's crazy to see the difference in just one home game apart.
Yeah. Again, that Florida game, it's that's part of what almost tricks you is so that game, you go from when it's 2-0, there's fire Sweeney chants in the building. Then the Bruins mount this comeback. You get the big Nikita Zadorov fight against Sam Bennett, just, pounding his head in. And that building is about as loud as it's been all season.
Yeah.
Maybe the loudest it's been all year. And you're like, wow, people love this. This team's giving fans something to cheer about, something to buy into, maybe not fully believe in, but something to cheer for in the short term. And then you get yesterday, in that second period, it's boos at every break, loud boos as they leave the ice at the intermission after landing 0 shots on goal. We played the clip off the top of Elias Lindholm referencing that, saying they deserved it. Pavel Zacha said the same thing after the game, they deserve to get booed after that effort. And then the third period, it's more the same. And really, by the midway point of the third period, building's empty. More than half the crowd is filed out. It's just dead. And it's what's left is still booing at the end. And if this is going to be a longer-term rebuild instead of just a 1 or 2 year retool, you're going to have a lot of nights like that. And that's where I wonder, are people really as patient as they say they are now? Are people really going to stand for that over any prolonged period of time? And more importantly, are the Jacobs going to stand for that?
What's going to happen is they're going to stop going. And then as soon as they're good again, then they'll consider spending money on it again. But it does stink for people who maybe bought tickets in the beginning of the season and they're like, oh, I see this matchup. I want to watch Florida, Boston, and we're going to go in March. It's going to be great. There's going to be it's going to be almost a playoffs. And then you go and the Bruins had just essentially management throwing in the towel at the trade deadline by selling and getting rid of maybe your favorite player. If your favorite player was Coyle or Carlo or Frederick or Marchand or maybe Brazeau, but I feel really more of the Marchand, Coyle, fan base might have wanted to go see them, and then they're gone. And I would say out of town, but Marchand was still in town. But yeah, no, it felt, and this is how it felt for the Red Sox a few times recently as well. You get to the deadline and you watch what your ownership is going to do. Do they believe in us? Are they going to add? Are they throwing in the towel? And then it seems like the team kind of mentally gets to that point as well. And that's happened to the Sox. It's just the nature of seeing what your management does, and it affects you.
Well, and because the trade deadline is so late in the season in hockey, I think you can stomach it for the rest of a season, right? I think at the deadline there were 18 games left at that point. So you're already, less than a quarter of the season to go. But if you go into a year, you start next year, and it's obvious right away that you're still not looking at a playoff team. that's when it gets really challenging. When now you're looking at a full season of nights like last night.
Full season of being Chicago.
Yeah, like I remember I was a senior in high school during the 06-07 season, which like all these marks that the Bruins are hitting this year of like first time they've done something this bad since, they're all like since the 06-07 season. Like the last time the Bruins had 0 shots on goal in a period before this year was December of 2006, and now they've done it twice this year. So, yeah, like I don't want to see a season like that again. Like that season was awful to watch. We have to catch another break here. Lots to get to. Again, number to join us is 617-779-7937. We'll be right back after this.
We're back to Sunday Skate on WEEI.
Wanted to get back to Swayman, and we're going to play a couple questions that I asked him after the game last night, partially about his workload and these last 2 games. And then I want to react to it on the other side. So, Jacob, you can play that now.
Jeremy, from your perspective, what happened in that second period?
I think they just capitalized on turnovers and their opportunities, and that's just kudos to them. Something that we got to understand. We're playing top team, that they're going to capitalize on those kind of opportunities.
Tough to have 2 games like this after you guys seem to have a good thing going in the previous 2.
Yeah, it's not fun to lose. Something that we got to work on and come together. We have it in this group. We just got to find it, stick to it, and play for 60 minutes, and I think we can have a good formula.
How are you feeling physically at this point in the season? You're now past your career high in games played.
Excellent. I'm really happy with it. My body's responding, where my mind is, and where I'm at mentally, even through the adversity that we face. I know that every day that I get up, it's a new day, a new opportunity to succeed, and that's something that I've really honed in this year, and my body's responding really well, and I'm really happy for it, and I know I'm going to keep doing whatever I need to do to stay healthy and ready to play any given night.
Okay, so as I mentioned in the question there, he is now is starting to get well past his career high in games played. He's up to 49 now this season. Previous career high was 44, 43 starts. And I went through in the first segment with Razor the numbers when he started a 3rd, 4th, or 5th straight game. Because first or second, I'll just reset them. First or second straight start, pretty good. 17, 14, and 3 record, 9-10 save percentage. You would take that. That's at least an above average goalie. You'd maybe like a little better, but that's above average. Nothing to complain about. 3rd, 4th, or 5th straight start this season, 3-9-3 record, 872 save percentage. So, again, like this is those answers you hear from Swayman. It's like this is that eternal optimism I mentioned, where it's like he's always looking on the bright side of things and says he feels great, but obviously something isn't quite clicking. Because Razor mentioned that yes, those numbers are skewed a bit by giving up 7 goals to Dallas, 8 goals to Winnipeg. Yes, that drags it down a lot. But there's also there's a lot of 4 or 5 goals against in those 3rd, 4th straight starts. Like it's not like those are the only 2 really bad ones and everything else is fine. Like there are other rough games in there, and Thursday night in Ottawa was a 3rd straight start where he was bad in that first period.
He gets pulled. He played 20 minutes and that's it. And it was a Swayman versus Ullmark game, which everybody wanted to see, and Swayman didn't last into the second period.
Yeah, and it was a deserved pull. Like the Bruins as a team didn't play well in that first period in Ottawa. They got outshot 15-4, I think. And while that wasn't as extreme as what we saw in the second period Saturday, it did kind of feel like that, where they were like pretty consistently under siege in their own zone. So it's not all on him. There were breakdowns leading up to all of those goals, but I thought he could have done better on just about all of them. Like the first one, he's not screened. It just beats him under the glove. One's a rocket of a slap shot, but it's from the top of the circle. And again, he wasn't screened. I know, we ran out of time with the Razor, but I heard him on Morning Brew. The one he actually had the biggest issue with was Ottawa's power play goal, which looks like the best setup. Like it would have been the toughest one to stop, I think, where it's a backdoor pass from Brady Tkachuk over to, I'm forgetting who he set up on it, but it's a backdoor play, so it's bang bang. But Swayman looks like he gets almost stuck in place, like he doesn't even get close to making it across the crease.
I believe it was that one of Batherson's goals.
Yeah, that was Batherson.
Yeah.
So Razor actually, because Razor was like, even if he doesn't end up making the save, basically what he was saying was you have to at least get across, like you have to at least be able to challenge it there. So that was a tough game, and it was a third straight start, and it was a big game. Like Nikita Zadorov before that game called it the biggest game of the season, and the team didn't rise to the moment. Swayman didn't. Saturday's game, I put less on him and more on the team in front of him. Two of the goals are deflected right in front of them. One of them was double deflected. One of them, like, ricochets off a shin pad and kind of creates a scramble situation. Like, I don't have as much of an issue with Saturday, but that game Thursday night, it's like that was a moment where you needed your number one $8.25 million goalie to be a lot better.
Yeah, and he's about to have his 50th start of the season coming up, and we talked about, and this is something that, of course, it'd be great to have Razor on when we're talking about goalies, but he had mentioned in the past 2 seasons when we're talking about goalie rotations and do you do it in the playoffs and like how much it helps in the regular season versus how much you don't really need it in the playoffs. If you're gonna ride one guy anyway, and so you decide Swayman is that guy that you want for the playoffs. But in the regular season, you do see how much it is missed that to have that luxury of 2 goalies that can go give one guy a mental or physical rest, not worry about if he gets hurt. You know you already have another guy there. It was like this. It was just this way to get to the playoffs that seemed easier over the past 2 seasons when you had Ullmark and Swayman. They were stealing games. Confidence was there. And now, obviously, the elephant in the room is the injuries that have been suffered on the defense this year. And McAvoy's still out week to week, and Lindholm not coming back. So that's a big factor too. But they had this solid foundation of 2 goalies that it just always felt like one of them's going to take it and run with it. The competition was there, and they pushed each other to be better. And now that's not necessarily what's happening. You see, and it's not, I don't think it's a physical workload issue. It's just getting used to the starting role.
Yeah, and quick Charlie McAvoy update, by the way. He has started skating in the past week, and I believe just yesterday started stick handling and shooting, or at least from what reporters saw who were there. Obviously, they've been on the road at times, so we don't see every time he's out there, but that's encouraging. Like, he's on the ice, he is shooting, stick handling, so, I would assume he's still got a ways to go. Joe Sakic said there's no update on the timeline, but the next step is him skating with the team. All right, we got to catch a break here. I do want there's more Swayman to get into. I also want to get into the play of some of the new guys who, last week we were reacting to 1 game of them. Now we've got 4 games, so worth touching on that as well. Hour 2 of Sunday Skate coming up next. Welcome back to Sunday Skate. Scott McLaughlin here with Bridget Prue. Jacob Lassner behind the glass. So we were talking about Jeremey Swayman in the last segment, and I wanted to wrap up a couple thoughts here because I feel like we've started to hear the storyline again this week, or some people have had the take that, the Bruins picked the wrong goalie, or they made a mistake giving Swayman the contract, or they boxed themselves in because they traded Ullmark before they had Swayman signed. And it's a lot of revisionist history because I don't think anyone, I shouldn't say anyone. I said on our podcast this week, on the Skate podcast, that no one was saying after the playoffs that the Bruins should choose Ullmark over Swayman. One person tweeted at me with receipts that they were saying it. So I forget who it was. I forget the Twitter handle. I apologize if they're listening, but that one person can stick to that take.
Yeah, if you show the proof.
Yeah.
That it was your original take. But Well, I mean, Ullmark was a great goalie. He's a Vezina Trophy-winning goalie. It was just that everybody at the time saw how Swayman performed last playoffs and were really impressed. And he was universally liked at that time. He maybe was the most popular person in Boston at the time of the playoffs.
Right. Through 2 rounds of the playoffs, he was not just the best goalie in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He was the best player through those first 2 rounds.
And he was playing so well that you knew that the whole goalie rotation in the playoffs conversation was over. He put it to bed.
Yeah,
it was his net.
They started Ullmark the second game of round 1. They lost, but he didn't play poorly. He was good. Swayman was just better and ran with the job and started every game. Ullmark never did it in the playoffs. Remember, the 2 years that he was the game 1 starter, he didn't make it to the end of the first round. He got replaced by Swayman both years. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of revisionist history on the idea that they picked the wrong one. Swayman's younger, 5 years younger, a lot more upside. Now, the leverage thing, again, this is just a matter of the calendar. You had to trade Linus Ullmark before or at the draft. If you were going to get a first round, there's only so many teams looking for goalies. And by 5 p.m. on July 1st, everyone's pretty much done with their offseason building, except for maybe a couple deals that drag out and take longer. You weren't getting a first-round pick for Linus Ullmark in September. That deal, the Ottawa Senators would have pivoted and done something else in goal.
It's worked out for them. They're happy
that
with
deal. That deal was only there up until the draft, which was the end of June. So if you were going to make it, you had to make the trade then. And I totally, $13 million wrapped up in the goalie position is a lot. And I totally get why the Bruins didn't want to do that and wanted to pick a guy.
And also that both goalies did not want to be a backup. As much as they really enjoyed each other's company and they were the best of friends, still are really good friends and almost like family, I'm sure they would have liked to keep that dynamic, but they're both competitors and they both wanted to be number one, not just 1A, 1B, like 1 and 2. Like they wanted to be number one, the sole number one, and it just wasn't going to work on the same team.
No, and, but now with all eyes on Swayman and look, what I do get in terms of the criticism is the people now worried about this contract because, he has not played like an $8.25 million number one elite goalie this season. I don't know if I'm willing to cut him slack, but what I want to see is how he looks next year with a regular offseason, a full training camp, a full preseason. I do think missing that time in September hurt him. I do think that time matters. And as much as he can be over at BU and feel like he's getting ready, it's not the same as being on the ice with NHLers. It's not the same as going through training camp with the Boston Bruins. It's not the same as playing in preseason games against NHL competition. He missed all of that, and I think it put him behind the 8 ball. I think he has never been able to catch up this season. So I'm willing to give him next year, see how he looks with, the right prep going into the season. If next year looks like this, yes, then absolutely you worry about what the next 6 years of that deal look like.
That's kind
I'm
of what
not
I was
quite
asking
there
Razor.
right now. Yeah.
That's what I was asking. I said, well, at what point do you think you'll start to see him settle into it? And Razor gave part of his answer was, it'll be fine. And the other part was concerning. He says some guys never settle into it. So some guys never can figure out how to be the starter, which he's not wrong. Not everybody that gets a big contract like that and people put their money on pans out. But I do think it's too soon to say that. I've heard other people and seen on, the wonderful world of Twitter that people being like, oh, it was a huge mistake. He's never going to pan out. But I do think next year team defense also could maybe factor in. I know we were seeing him give up goals that are softer than normal, that's on him. But team defense should, with McAvoy and Lindholm back, be stopping some more of these high danger chances from even him having to even see those shots and not spending so much time in their own zone. So there's plenty of reasons to think that next year will be different for him once he gets a full, regular training camp, but also hopefully with a healthy defense that includes your 2 top guys back.
Right. So I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but his high danger save percentage this year, so his save percentage on high danger shots is not good. He's near the bottom of the league.
But how many has he faced?
Also a lot. Yeah.
So you're going to give up more if you face more like that.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, there's guys who are
not necessarily, but it's a lot
Lucas
to ask.
Dostal in Anaheim's near the top.
Okay,
of the
but
league.
is that not a lot to ask? Oh,
It is. Right.
You're going to face so many.
Yes, you want your defense to lessen the load and make it easier because, yes, in theory, it's easier to lock in for one high danger chance every 5 minutes than 3 or 4 of them happening on one shift.
Yeah.
Because you're pinned in your own zone.
And you're battling and you're out of position because you have to make a few in a row, and it's certainly a lot. That's a lot to ask, and so those numbers. You have to take that into consideration. And
Swayman has, again, the people who act like, Swayman's never done it or whatever. He's had a really good high danger save percentage in the past. So he has done it. Now, again, that was in split workload in a platoon. So it's all different when you ramp up.
You say everything's so weird. Platoon. It's platoon.
Platoon.
No, jeez. I swear you do this. I swear you
pontoon boat.
For real, I swear you've been doing this recently, where you try to see if all motives or something. But you hear him, Jacob, right? This is gay.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, platoon. What are you?
That wasn't crazy. What are we talking about?
Thank you, Jacob. So we wanted to get to the new guys and what we've seen from them through now 4 games. And I know where I want to start.
Go.
And it's our co-host Brian DeFelice of the Skate Pod has become the new leader of the fan club of this particular player. Even though we can't.
Do they have a name yet? Have they named themselves?
Well, I heard what Brian was calling them. He wrote #Koozie Gang. But
I think we can work on that.
Well, that's what it is right now. Which I'm pronouncing it wrong because his name is it's a silent K. Husnadinov. So Merit Husnadinov, which when I saw that name come over, I was like, good luck, Judd. Have fun with that one. But I think we got it down now.
What about the Hoos nuts? The Koozie nuts?
No.
There's something there.
No, there's not. No. I'm done with your ideas. So the reason I want to go to him first is not just because
this is the rest of Sunday Skates the rest of the season.
It's St. Patrick's Day, and I'm sorry about him, but
in a platoon.
Yeah, thank you for saving that. But no, so the reason I bring him up first is not only because there's a new fan club, but he's a guy that has already in his 4 games scored the same amount of goals as he did in his, I believe it was 57 games. Let me pull it up. 57 games with Minnesota this year. He had 2 goals. 4 games with the Bruins. He has 2 goals. He scored in both of the last 2 games. And I've liked what I've seen. He has some emotion to his game. He has some skill. He's a good stick handler. And one of the goals was kind of like a partial break finish, and I personally have thought he's been a great addition, considering that he wasn't really anyone that was on our radar. He was somebody being underused in Minnesota. He's already over his average ice time on ice with the Bruins. He's getting, and obviously this is partially to do with the fact they traded so many people away as the caveat, but he's at about 15 and a half minutes with Boston. He was only at 11-15 with the Wild through those 57 games that he played this year. So he's just kind of grabbed that extra ice time, and he's taking advantage of it.
Yeah, and they're using him a lot differently. So if you look at zone starts, which is, are you starting shifts in the defensive zone, offensive zone? In Minnesota, he had an offensive zone star percentage of just 34.7%. So only taking out shifts that he started in the neutral zone or on the fly. Only 34.7% of his zone starts were in the offensive zone. 65% were in the defensive zone. In Boston, it's almost flipped. He's at 58% offensive zone. So it's a completely different role. He's being put in more offensive situations. You mentioned more minutes. And yet, like, you have to like what you've seen. He plays a relentless style. We saw his goal last night, ends up being a shot through traffic from out high, but starts with him winning a battle on the forecheck. Just goes in hard on the forecheck, takes the body, wins the puck, carries it out to the side of the net, goes low to high to the point, gets it back and scores. And, so what you're seeing is like, so he comes in with Jacob Lauko, right? And I don't mean this as like a knock on Lauko, but then you put them on the same lines and they play similar styles in terms of the speed, the aggression, the physicality, even though they're, Kuznetsov he was initially listed as 5'9". I think he's officially now listed at 5'11". So I don't know, maybe he's 5'10", maybe split the difference. Yeah, he grew. He's not the biggest player, but he does bring some physicality. But the difference there in terms of like, okay, what are you getting? Because we all know what Jacob Lauko is. He's just energetic, physical, ideally fourth liner. He's playing up right now because this roster is just
he's playing
so
on
depleted.
The second line.
Yeah. But with Kuznetsov, what you see on top of that is you see good hands and like the ability to make plays with the puck on his stick, hold on to the puck. You see vision. Thursday night, in addition to his own goal, he set up Mason Lohrei for the chance that Linus Ullmark made the great diving glove save on. Like, you see actual offensive skill there. And this is a guy who produced when he was playing in the KHL. And yeah, Minnesota, for whatever reason, just didn't use him that way. They used him as a defensive fourth liner. He didn't put up points. He really wasn't used in offensive situations. And he kind of has a completely new lease on life here in the Bruins and a fresh start into, so far is taking advantage of it. And you gotta be encouraged. Like, I don't know if he's, on a good team, a top 6 player, we'll see. But even if you got, a good, consistent third liner here, like, that's a win because Justin Brazeau started the year second, third line and then really faded, So, again, like, we're early here in the Marat Kuznetsov experiment in Boston, but early returns, very encouraging.
Yeah, definitely. He's been somebody that's fun to watch. I don't think he's going to be scoring in 50% of the games he plays the rest of the season. But
probably not.
But, hey, that's what he's done so far. If he scores one more goal, that'll be his new career high. Well, I guess technically I should rephrase this. He's at his new career high, but with different teams, it's split. So he's got 2 with Minnesota, 2 with Boston. But anyway, there's a few other guys too.
Yeah,
so
which we're gonna have to get to after the break. Before we go to break, I did just want to answer. So someone texted in because I was mentioning high danger save percentage. What's a high danger shot? So just quickly to define it, if you draw a home plate looking area from the crease out to the faceoff dot, across to the other faceoff dot, back to the crease, that's the high danger area. So that you might hear it called grade A area, home plate area, but that area really close to the net.
The house. That's what you call it in basketball. Yeah, definitely.
You hear that in hockey too. Yeah. So
that's what my coach said.
That's what we mean by high danger shot. All right. That is the voice of Jacob Lassner. He's going to have your trending, and then we'll be back with more Sunday Skate. Welcome back to Sunday Skate. Scott McLaughlin here with Bridget Prue, Jacob Lassner behind the glass. So we were talking about, we're starting to get into some of the new Bruins. Mentioned Marat Kuznetsov, scored for a second straight game Saturday, even in a losing effort. But that line with him, Elias Lindholm, and Jacob Lauko, at least by the Bruins standards last night, had a good game. They were probably the Bruins' best line. Elias Lindholm, by the way, 2 points. Now 4 points in his last 3 games. 3-game point streak. So maybe a little bit of something there for him to start to build on. This ties in a little to another new Bruin I want to discuss, which is Casey Middlestat, who had points in his first 3 games as a Bruin. His line with Cole Koepke and Vinny Lettieri, I thought had a really tough game last night. shots on goal when they were on the ice, 6-0 Tampa for the night. So they got pinned in quite a bit. Not the only ones on the team you can say that about, but they did not create the kind of chances that they had. But Middlestead and Elias Lindholm, kind of tie together here because it's this conversation about the future of the center position. Middlestead, for 2 more years after this. Lindholm, we know, signed for 6 more years after this. So, I don't think either one of those guys is going to be a legit number 1 center. One of them has to be a number 2. One of them has to be a really good number 3. However you line that up, they're both going to need better wingers going forward, with all due respect to the likes of Koepke, Lettieri, Lauko. Like, those guys should be competing more for 4th-line jobs than middle 6 jobs. Husnudinov might stick in the middle 6. He might actually have a home there, the way he's been playing. So, but that's otherwise a lot of wing positions to fill in around those guys.
So in case people don't know what contract the Bruins took on for Casey Middlestad, he's in the first year of a 3-year contract. So this isn't a rental. If people were wondering, is this somebody that's just going to be gone next season? No, he still has 2 years of term left on his deal. So he's somebody that's going to be, we're going to be thinking about how are the Bruins going to fill in as him as a piece that's going to be there. So filling around him as a center, and who do you want his wingers to be? And obviously they're short of wingers right now that are middle 6 caliber.
Yeah, now if you're the Bruins, you would love to find a legit, true number 1 center somewhere, because right now it's Pavel Zacha in that spot, and for the most part, that's been a good line with him, Pasternak, and Morgan Geekie. I would say if you had really good 2nd and 3rd lines behind it, you can roll with that as your first line. But overall, this team is still trying to figure out the center position. I think, again, ideally, you'd have that elite guy at the top, and then either you bump Zacha over to wing, move either him or Geekie down a line or 2, and that would, help fill in those wing spots. It's just so hard to find, as we've seen. The Bruins they've tried to bring guys in. They keep picking up these guys who maybe didn't quite work somewhere else, give them more opportunity here. And that's a good strategy. And some of these guys have worked out, right? Like Morgan Geekie clearly has been a better player in Boston than he was in Seattle or Carolina.
I think Andrew Peake's probably a guy you can put under that category. He just reached his career high in points last night, and he was a guy that wasn't probably used as much or maybe as correctly as Boston's used him when he was back with Columbus. So
they weren't even playing him regularly.
Yeah, he was like a scratch,
yeah.
And he has an offensive upside to him, which you saw yesterday when he got the assists. And
a little. I mean, that was a nice play.
It was a nice play, but not everybody.
In general, I would say he's pretty limited offensively.
He's not a guy that can't transition the puck and can't set things up. But he's done better here in Boston than previously. He was a guy that was traded for. Is that last deadline?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Henry Jokiharju, another guy they just brought in this deadline from Buffalo. Now he is a rental. He's a pending unrestricted free agent, but they only traded a 4th-round pick for him. He gets more opportunity here as well, and
he's getting almost 4 minutes more per night of time on ice. He's a 20-minute guy for Boston, where he was a 16-minute guy before that this season. So he's definitely and obviously the caveat, as I said last segment, being that there's holes to fill here that are bigger. There's extra space for people to grow into because of the injuries and because of the guys that were traded out.
Right. Ideal. So obviously McAvoy's your number 1 defenseman on the right side. Ideally, neither Jokiharju nor Peake are really in your top 4, but one of them might be. Again, this team's going to have to prioritize help up front. Offense has been the biggest problem all season. So you can't fix everything in one offseason. I think they're going to have to prioritize offense. But bringing this back to like Middlestad and Lindholm, what do we see for them moving? Like, is Elias Lindholm just going to be a number 3 center? He's certainly overpaid if he is one, but like, I don't know, does Middlestad end up slotting in ahead of him? He might. He seems to have a little more offensive skill and ability, certainly than what we've seen from Lindholm this year.
I think what I see from him that's different is he's a little bit more creative minded. It seems like he's going to different areas of the ice and trying to make maybe just more creative plays than you see. Because I feel like Elias Lindholm, and this isn't a knock on him, he plays very like traditional center, like conservative, doesn't really find himself out of position too much, but also that has limited him in terms of scoring. Whereas Middlestad he's a great playmaker, and he finds that space, and he draws attention. And I don't know, I've seen him definitely be more creative, I think.
Yeah, and that wasn't supposed to happen with Elias Lindholm. Like, he wasn't supposed to just be a defensive center. You were expecting a lot more offense from him. Again, maybe these last few games is something to build on. It's only 3 games, so I'm not going to lose my mind over it. But yeah, like, maybe he ends up more as a third-line matchup center. That's just what he is. That's, by the way, like, that's part of the reason why they traded Charlie Coyle, is because there's just too much duplication there. Like, you have 2 centers who really the only thing that they had brought this season was they were able to be used in a matchup role, face off against top lines, and mostly hold their own defensively. And it's like, okay, but you're not going to have 2 of your top 3 centers do that, which is why Charlie Coyle was playing the wing. So, and
you recall when Bergeron and Krejci left, and when we were having conversations about the power play and replacing Bergeron on the power play, we were just talking about who can come in and be that bumper guy on the power play. And I feel like, unfortunately, I don't think Middlestad's that either. I that's not really where you find him. He plays
on the
more wing. Yeah, he's on the flank, and so neither of those guys turned out to be bumper guys.
Right. Maybe it's Morgan Geekie. Like, there's offensively, I mean, there's so much for this team to figure out all over the ice, honestly. Like, we're focusing on the offense, but it's like, earlier we were talking about how many high danger chances they give up. Now, you get healthy Charlie McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm, that should help a lot. So I guess I'm not as worried about that, just in terms of what you need to prioritize. But yeah, like, this is the challenge when we talk about it. Can this be a quick turnaround? Can they really be back at it next year? And it's like, you already had holes up front even before you traded away Brad Marchand. Now you have even more. Again, like, right now you have one true bona fide top-line winger, obviously, in David Pastrnak. You have Morgan Geekie, who has been a good complementary piece up there. And if you want to call him a top 6 winger, okay, fine. That's it. Like, you're not only are you missing your other 2 top 6 wingers, you're then also missing your 2 third-line wingers. Like, there's just so much that this team needs to figure out and fill in moving forward. And, we can even bring in, like, the prospects here as part of this conversation, because we're not seeing them right now. Matt Patra's back in Providence. They've tried him at wing, but he's obviously a natural center. Georgi Merkulov, we've seen get, a handful of games up here, but not produce. He got sent back down. Fabian Lysell still only had 1 game. Really hasn't forced their hand to get another call-up. And I don't know if we're going to see those guys this season. Like, I think part of the calculation for the Bruins here is they might feel like it's just better for those guys to finish the year in Providence and make a playoff run, try to win the Calder Trophy, win a championship down there. And we might just not see them. Like, I know there's this mindset from some people of, what do you have to lose? Just bring them up and play them. I think the Bruins are looking at it like, this is kind of a mess up here anyways. Like, do we really want to throw them into that? Or do we want to have them in a more, competitive, structured environment where they're on a team that's winning down in Providence? But, like, those are all guys that you need to decide going forward if they have a role here, where they fit. can they be part of the solution, or are those guys all just AHLers?
My thought on that is, and as much as I like watching Matt Patra and think that if you were actually going for it, you would need him in the lineup, I just don't really know if there's a need to have him up now. Because we were having that conversation when they were still in a playoff spot, I believe, which now feels like a while ago, but that you needed as many offensive guys as you could that had a chance of setting up some scoring, and Patra was one of them. But now that you don't have to worry about this season and you can focus on development, I don't see an issue with him being down there.
Yeah, and again, like, he had gotten to a place where he was, I think, pretty clearly getting worn down. He only had 1 goal in 33 NHL games this season. His last 9 games up in Boston, 0 points. And, the counter you hear to that is, well, you have to play him with real line mates. And it's like, okay, well, this is the team that they have. Like, sorry, you're going to have to find a way. Again, is Marat Husnudinov playing with anyone better than Patra was playing with? No, but he's coming in, he's finding a way to produce. So
I'm interested in this Fraser Minton.
Yeah, who's just started playing in Providence, got his visa issue settled, but
he's, if people don't know, he's who the Bruins got in that Carlo trade to the Maple Leafs. He's 20 years old. He has played a few NHL games before, so he's played 15 games with Toronto in the NHL, and then the rest of his career as a pro has been in the AHL, but he's still young, and I just want to see, just take a look.
Yeah, and again, like another guy where they have to identify going into this offseason, like, how close is he and what kind of contribution can he make? They're going to have a lot of these decisions to make on these guys because they need to, I think they need to be big game hunting to an extent in free agency, but that might only end up being one guy. Like, if you're really near the top of the market, like, let's just throw out Mitch Marner, who's probably going to be the top free agent. Certainly, I would say the best offensive player who's going to be out there.
Brad Marchand?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Brad Marchand will be one of the top free agents.
Yeah.
Like, he's not going to be that far down the list.
No, he's going to be up there. It's just, I think that ship has sailed.
Yeah, we can probably touch on that in our last segment coming up here because Brad Marchand has talked since the last time we were on last Sunday.
And he released a beer.
Yes, he also released a beer. But, yeah, just to close off the conversation, though, on the prospects, like, yeah, you might, if you really want to be at the top of the market where you're trying to land, like, a legit difference maker, you might only land one of those guys because you look at $29 million in cap space, and it's like, okay, well, if you do, Mitch Marner's going to get, like, $13 or $14 million a year. Now, maybe it's not him, but maybe it's someone you're giving $10 million a year. And then you add in all your restricted free agents you have to re-sign, like, and just filling out a team, you're going to run out of that money pretty quickly. You know, you're not getting 3 big free agents.
Even with the cap going up, it just feels like it's not going to help all that much. I know it's hard to kind of quantify or wrap your head around exactly how it changes where you can spend your money, but as the cap goes up, so do prices for free agents. So that's why guys are going to, if you want the biggest guy out there, you're spending more now that there's free space. And that's why Marchand was asking for more than what he'd been taking in the past, because the cap goes up. You say, hey, I'm the guy you should spend that money on. That extra money that we know you have, give that to me.
Yeah. I do want to get to Marchand. We have to catch our last break, but that feels like a good way to wrap up this week's show. So you can still call in or text us 617-779-7937, and we'll be back with the final segment of Sunday Skate next.
You're listening to Sunday Skate on WEEI.
I don't know, I guess is how I would respond. I don't know what the future brings in terms of how it plays out in the summertime. I know, it didn't come together now. Can things change down the road? Potentially, but that's to be seen. So, I'm sure we'll have a conversation down the road, but I don't know where that goes. So, I mean, obviously I would still love. Like it doesn't change my love for the city and the will to want to be here has never changed. I don't think that it will ever change.
All right, welcome back to Sunday Skate. That was Brad Marchand talking on Tuesday at TD Garden, where just 4 days after being traded, he was back in Boston and back on TD Garden ice with his new team.
And I almost ran him over.
And Bridget almost ran him over.
I did. I'm sorry, Brad. He laughed, so we're good. We're cool.
Yeah, I guess TD Garden parking garage, Brad Marchand's might just jump out at you.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it. It was the last thing I was expecting. I was running late. He was running late, I guess. And we almost had an unfortunate situation.
Well, he wasn't playing, so he didn't need to be there super early.
He's just carrying his dunks in. Just in his suit, just carrying his dunks in. We got 2 calls. Do you want to get to these quick?
Yeah, by the way, do you notice the names?
Bob in Londonderry and Jay in
Bob? Do you know Jay and Silent Bob? Is that even like a thing?
No.
If you were a boy growing up in the 90s, you knew Jay and Silent Bob. But yeah, let's go to Bob in Londonderry here. Bob, I'm assuming you're not silent if you're calling in. Bob?
You were wrong.
Maybe he is silent. Do you think he's doing a bit, or are we just having phone issues?
I don't know, but I'm going to drop him.
Okay. All right, let's try Jay in Winthrop. What's up, Jay?
Hi. The Bruins blew the number 1 pick again last year. They got that number 1 pick from Ottawa in the trade for the goalie. This kid, Letourneau, is at Boston College. He's a 4th-line player now in 35 games, no goal, 3 assists. He was the number 25 pick in the first round. The number 26 pick in the first round is this kid, Liam Greentree, by the Los Angeles Kings. Last year for Windsor in the junior OHA, in 64 games, he had 36 goals, 54 assists. He was a captain. He's 6'3", 216. He has all the tools. They only play a 68-game schedule. This year, through February 15th, in 52 games, he has 37 goals and 54 assists. He's 6'3", 216, got a wicked shot. They just blew it. Their amateur guy that's head of the scouting, NATO, doesn't know anything, and that's Sweeney's fault.
All right, thanks, Jay. So
I did not think we were getting a Dean Letourneau call today.
No, that's a call for Jacob. So Jacob calls BC games on radio. So let's get the Dean Letourneau scouting report from Jacob, because the caller is right about the numbers. They haven't been pretty this season.
Yeah, so what I've noticed about Dean Letourneau is he's got a great shot. His skating needs work. He needs to fill in his frame. He can't receive passes. He isn't great in the defensive zone or on faceoffs, but he is a freshman and there's plenty of time for him to develop, right? So there is still some things to be excited about. You think about a pick like Tage Thompson. It took him like 5 years to really get going at the NHL level, or even at a minor league level. Dean Letourneau is going to take a lot more time than Bruins fans really want right now with this whole retool going on. But you can't really know everything about everything yet, simply because he is just a child.
He really is. He's like a 7-foot tall child, but he definitely still figuring out his body and putting weight on, and basically he probably came into college a year earlier than he was expected to.
He shouldn't be there.
And so
he should be in the USHL.
That is why you see the numbers the way that they are. He's also on the number 1 team in the country, and he's not getting as much ice time. You say he's a 4th liner. Well, it's the number 1 team in the country. He's going to be a 4th liner because of his youth and because of all of the other talent that they have.
The only reason why he came to BC this year is because Will Smith decided to sign his NHL contract.
Yep.
So he is supposed to be our center depth on the team, but it isn't really working out that way. for him this season, but I think he's going to have a much bigger role on next year's team.
So, and what I would also note here is, so the comparison to Greentree, because that is the one that gets brought up a lot because he went one pick later. I would just say the projections on those two were always different. Like, I don't know that this season has changed a whole lot. Like, everyone knew going into the draft that Liam Greentree could score in the OHL. He did it last year. So being an 18-year-old returning player in the OHL is different than being an 18-year-old jumping to Hockey East from Canadian prep school, which is like several levels below.
Yeah, that's a huge jump. It's a huge jump for guys to be playing college hockey in a different conference and go to Hockey East. Never mind to make that jump at that age. And you know, I didn't think we were going to be talking about this. We only have like 2 minutes left.
Right. So I do want to bring this back to Marchand. So, Bridget, I'll just ask you, like, did you have any big takeaway from Marchand speaking to the media Tuesday?
I'll keep it quick and simple. I think that the bridge, not that the bridge is burned, but that the decision's made, and the rest of his career, I don't think you're going to see him back in Boston. I know that's what people were hopeful about, but the reason why it was such an emotional press conference, he kind of was brought to almost tears a few times, was because he's trying to mentally kind of get over the fact that the door's closed on this. And if he thought he was going to come right back, then that would be a huge help for the Bruins if he was just like, yeah, guys, I'll be back. I'm going to win a cup. We'll get you a second-round pick or maybe a first, and I'll help you guys out. You get that, and then I'm going to be back, and we're going to be back for it next year. That's not happening.
The only way it happens is if the contract that he wants isn't out there on the open market, because then if it becomes a situation where he's settling no matter what, well, maybe he decides that the team he'd prefer to settle with is the Bruins, and maybe they're still interested because they don't.
And his family is still staying here, I believe. So. And
again, the Bruins might have their sights set higher and have their sights set on someone younger, but maybe they end up in a situation where they have to settle for second, third choice in the free agent market. So that's the only way I could see it. But I think, look, if Marchand's asking for over $7 million, he may very well get that, because as we touched on earlier, like, he is going to be one of the top free agent wingers out there. So someone may very well be aggressive enough and desperate enough to give him that. It's just a question of, is that a place he wants to go and where he thinks he can win? Or, like, if the Anaheim Ducks are offering him $7.5 million a year, is he signing with them? Probably not.
No, because he wants
probably looking
to be
at other options.
Competitive, but will the Bruins be competitive? So, anyway, we're running out of time. I think, Scott, it's probably time for us to go. Maybe go have a Marchandy. People don't know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Look it up. Marchandy. Sam Adams released a new beer named after Brad Marchand with his face on the can the week after he got traded.
We will be back next Sunday at 9 a.m. Christian Arcand coming up next. Thank you for listening.